I'm going to talk to you today about two French language textbooks. The first one, Comme, qu'on, is a beginning level textbook that leads students to intermediate mid-competency in just 1 year. And then its companion textbook, C'est qu'on, qu'on, leads students to advanced low competency in just 1 more year. And here is a little excerpt from a final interview with a student who began Comme, qu'on, with absolutely no French. And this is what she sounds like at the end.
Ma troisième année, l'année dernière, j'ai étudié à l'étranger à Rome. Et même si j'étais à Rome pour étudier, il a semblé un peu comme des vacances prolongées parce que j'avais jamais beaucoup de travail.
So you get a sense of how fluent she is. And here's an example of a writing sample in an exam situation. So the student had approximately a half an hour to write this without any reference materials. And he's writing about a good friend, how long they've known each other, how they met, when they last saw each other, what they did and talked about together, and what they're going to do together in the future. So how do Comme, on, and C'est qu'on, achieve such rapid proficiency levels in students? Well, we used a reverse design approach to design these textbooks. We began with ACTFL proficiency goals as our starting point, and we interviewed over 100 native French speakers, collecting over 150 hours of interviews, role plays, and public interactions. And then we worked from the authentic discourse to the structures and vocabulary needed to realize the different speech acts that we targeted. So students first hear numerous unscripted clips for each topic, and then they're led to discover the grammar underlying different speech acts. They examine and they discuss the cultural import of the clips, and then they work with these model clips, structures, and personal vocabulary in increasingly open-ended communicative exercises. Now, textbooks typically teach greetings through fabricated dialogues, and then they pair that with cultural generalizations. Instead, in Comme, on, students observe how real French people actually greet each other in real situations. We play about a 50-second clip of a group of French friends who are greeting each other for their bi-weekly dinner party. This is a real group of people that students are observing. And we ask them to first observe the gestures they use. What types of handshakes do they see? Hugs do they see? Kisses do they see? And who does what to whom? What do the women do with the women do with the men? And then they check off in boxes here what they've observed, and then they discuss it afterwards. I'll just play a little bit of the tape so you can get a sense of it. Also, the best friend of the hostess's son just happened to arrive at the door, so we caught that greeting on tape as well. After students observe and discuss the greetings, they also are asked to describe how these greetings compare with the greeting norms in their own culture. And then eventually they look at the tape again and they listen for the actual greeting expressions. So students begin from day one to learn to observe and to self-reflect. And then afterwards, they have homework readings where different native speakers have written how greetings happen in their own culture, in their family circles, and also with whom they use tu and with whom they use vous. And here Pauline says that she uses tu with everyone except professors and older people she meets and people in public life. And she gives tu bis, starts from the left since she's from Paris, but her mom is from the southwest and gives 3 bis and starts from the right, and her grandmother, who's from the north, gives 4 bis and starts on the left. So rather than making sweeping generalizations, we present culture through a windows approach. We just present to students many different native speakers' behavior, perspectives, and eventually students see patterns emerge, and we help them to see the patterns and the individual behaviors. But how exactly do Comme, qu'on and c'est qu'on lead students to proficiency? Well, students first work with authentic discourse samples, either spoken or written. Here, they listen to Barbara talk about where she goes when she has free time, and she lives in Paris. So they fill in partial transcription. It's a workbook format, so students are filling in things all of the time. They are totally engaged all of the time. And then through these segments, students are led to discover the underlying grammar rules. In this small little segment from Barbara, they see a host of different grammar rules: the verb aller, ordinal numbers, expressions of frequency, preposition a plus definite article, pronoun y, lots of vocabulary building exercises that spin off from these segments. And then, of course, there are many cultural exercises that arise out of these authentic discourse samples. Here, the arrondissement of Paris. So just to give you an idea of different types of cultural richness elements that arise out of the authentic discourse, here in the unit on cinema, Pauline says that in American films there are special effects and something always has to happen to the characters. There's lots of action. And Céline has noticed that lots of French films take place around a family dinner. There are lots of problems and fights, and she thinks there's more emphasis on people, their personality, and past. In the unit on studies, students hear about Thérèse, who studied both in the United States and in France, and compares and contrasts how the systems work. In Unit 11, in C'est qu'on dit, Marie and Chloé note how easily strangers talk to each other in the US, and how that happens only in special circumstances in France. And then in Unit 12, Magda, who's a French Creole bilingual, talks about how her personality changes depending on which language she speaks. And Sally Coco talks about how much easier it is to develop close relationships with people in Congolese culture than is common in Western culture. And Lindsay talks about the differences between Parisian life and life in Guyane, which is where she's from. And all of these little segments spin off into grammatical examination, vocabulary expansion, and cultural discussions. Of course, there are many different communicative activities in the units, from the smallest little grammar rules that spin out into communicative activities to deep conversations or more open-ended conversations. So this is just giving you a couple of the numerous communicative activities that arise out of all of the work that students do in each chapter. Languages and personalities, whether students feel they are a different person depending on which language they speak. So these discussions become much more in-depth as they progress through our materials. And then they do homework on Linko, our online platform. There are grammar exercises that are called devoirs and vocabulary reinforcement exercises. They also do listening comprehension exercises, readings, and an audio or a video recording. The professor can decide which type of recording they would like their students to do. And the instructor can insert audio feedback in the recordings as well to the students. There are also unit final writing assignments. So students are taking notes throughout each unit as they do each communicative exercise, and they use those notes in their unit final writing exercise. And then there are also many assessment materials, mini listening quizzes for each unit with new authentic audio segments. And these are automatically graded on Linko, our online platform. Mini grammar and vocabulary quizzes. We provide 2 sets of each mini quiz, and instructors can use them individually or combine them and give students periodically a larger grammar and vocabulary quiz. We provide also proficiency-oriented speaking assessments and writing assessments, and of course, reading assessments. Any questions about Comme, qu'on dit or c'est qu'on dit? Please feel free to contact us. And this is a little email excerpt from a student who just completed our 2-year French method and who says, as I graduate, I reflect that taking French during my 2 years has been a genuine highlight. I never expected I would end my time at business school, acquiring a language and being able to converse in French. I truly believe this department has cracked the pedagogical method for language learning. Thanks a lot.